The President, please be seated. The court is now back in session. We would like to hand over to Judge Cartwright to proceed with some further questions to the experts and Dr. Chatida. You may proceed.
Thank you, President. Professor Chatida, we have been through several of the reports that you have made on Ieng Thirith. Can I ask you, were these reports required as part of your treatment of her for the purposes of the records of her treatment, or was there some other purpose in making these reports?
Response. The reports were filed as part of the practice when we treat people who may have experience with mental problem, and we had to be prepared and indeed in our report assess the clinical assessment.
Thank you. Now, I'll just take your last report where you say that her attitude to you was good. She had an appropriate mood affect. Her speech was normal, and you found no symptoms of hallucination. Can I ask you first about the conclusion that you saw no symptoms of hallucination? In their most recent report, the 3 court-appointed experts, when they were talking to you, were told by you that Ieng Thirith believed that someone was sleeping above her in her mosquito net, but that because you thought it was probably a spider, you concluded that this was not delusional thinking on Ieng Thirith's part. Can you just comment on that for me, please?
Response. Thank you, Your Honor. Concerning this point, I used to hear her say so. On one occasion, she said that a kind of object was seen moving on her mosquito, and she was pointing to the corner of the wall. And I asked her what she saw. She said she saw a spider. Then I looked straight into the direction she pointed to, and I saw the spider.
How often did you examine Ieng Thirith, Professor Chok? Was it on the occasions on which you have given reports, about 6 or 8 times since the beginning of last year?
Response. We have reported on 11 occasions or 11 reports, but the treatment was more frequent than the number of reports. And we also talked to the guards who reported that she did not sleep very well, and she became very angry and shouted, and we, along with other treating doctors, would then come to assist and examine her condition immediately.
In your most recent report of the 14th of August of this year, you mention that when you spoke to Ieng Thirith's nurses, they said that she was still ranting, but not as extremely as before. Is that right?
Response. In general, we assessed her health condition through the nurses who were on duty and through the treating doctors who examine her condition every day, and I obtained this additional information from them. This means that I do not see her on a daily basis.
Have you ever been present when Ieng Thirith has been ranting or shouting at the staff or hitting the door of her cell with her crutch?
Response. From February 2011 to date, and also during each occasion that I examined her, I never saw her or experienced her shouting like that. We had good communication with her. We could see her every time she felt relaxed in seeing us. On one occasion, I remember that we were there when she was having a bath, and we were asked to wait until she had the bath. So I had to wait for half an hour or 1 hour, and then I met her, and I never experienced such a ranting situation or shouting at us from her.
On each of the occasions when you examined her, how long would you spend assessing Ieng Thirith's health?
Response. Normally, we conducted the assessment once a month, or if necessary, twice a month. However, the ordinary or regular examination was conducted monthly.
How long did you spend with Ieng Thirith each time you examined her?
Response. Normally, it took us 1 hour or 1.5 hour or 2 hours, depending on the certain circumstance.
Now, consistently through your reports, you have indicated that you can see no signs of dementia, and you have also said consistently no symptoms of delusion, no hallucinations, and that she does not appear to be at any risk of hurting herself. Is that correct throughout the whole time you have been assessing her?
Response. Yes, it is, Your Honor.
Thank you. Now, we have looked at the report of the 12th of July when you administered the mini-mental status examination and reached a total score of 24. Did you administer that test on any other occasion when you have examined Ieng Thirith?
Response. You know, as I already stated previously, the test was administered, but we administered indirect tests, because if we resort to using the original test, we would never receive the result as expected because of lack of cooperation from her. That's why we applied the so-called indirect test.
So, just so I've got it clear, on the 12th of July, did you administer the mini-mental status examination, or did you modify and test her indirectly on that occasion?
Response. On the 12th of August, I administered SE and MMSE.
Was that the only time you administered the full test?
Response. Yes, it was. The test was complete and full.
Now, in the course of your ordinary duties as a psychiatrist, do you usually administer the MMSE test on other patients?
Response. Yes, I do, Your Honor. The test is administered on the impacted patient. However, as Your Honor may be familiar already, that Cambodian people have low educational background, and if we used the English test, as stated in the book, we would find it difficult. So we had to be flexible and modify the test a little bit, but we remain faithful to the original test.
So you follow the MMSE test, but you modify it or change it because you think that it does not suit the educational standards of many Cambodians today. Is that right?
Response. Yes, it is, Your Honor, but that does not apply to every patient, because some patients have a higher background in education, and for that we do not need to modify the test a lot, but for the people with low background of education, then we had to modify greatly to make sure that it can be administered.
Well, I'm just a little bit confused, and I'd like you to clarify for me. Ieng Thirith is a highly educated person, is she not? And so did you consider it necessary because of her intelligence level or her level of education to administer a simpler test to her, or what was your reason for using a modified test for Ieng Thirith?
Response. I share your opinion on this. However, I feel that the test to be administered on a highly educated person would be administered differently from patients who who are highly educated but not relevant to the court proceedings.
Well, can you just take me through what you actually did in your use of the test in July of this year? First of all, orientation. Did you follow precisely the MMSE test guidelines in in scoring her on orientation?
Response. With regard to her time orientation, I indeed administered this genuine test. However, as indicated in the report, she did not remember the exact date, although she pointed that it was a rainy season.
Well, the next matter is called registration in your report, and you scored her 3 points on that, and it seems to be a test where you ask her to name objects in her room. Is that correct?
Response. Yes, it is. I administered the test by asking her to repeat after me, for example, a glass, fruit, and socks. And if she could respond to all the questions, then she received 1 point for that. So I administered this test indeed.
The next part of the test related to attention and calculation. Can you explain to us how you assessed her on this part of the test?
Response. Your Honor, that test was the original test. The patient was asked to subtract 7 from 100. At that time, she had a watch. So I asked her to point to the watch and asked her to subtract 5 minutes and from that watch, and she scored 4 points on that.
In their report dated yesterday, the experts understood you to say that Ieng Thirith could correctly read the time on her watch, and they noted that this is not indicative of orientation in time, which should be examined by asking specific questions about day, date, month, season, and year, and without any external assistance. Do you believe you followed those guidelines?
Response. Your Honor, can you please repeat that question?
Yes, the experts in their report said that you reported that Ieng Thirith could correctly read the time on her watch, and they said this is not indicative of orientation in time, which should be examined by asking specific questions about day, date, month, season, and year, and without any external assistance. Do you believe that you followed those guidelines when you assessed her for attention and calculation?
Response. With regard to calculation, we did not only ask her to look at her watch and tell us the time. We asked her to subtract 5 minutes from each from the watch, and she kept responding very well to this question.
Under the part of the test called recall, it seems that you asked her to mention which items, you tested her to see if she could remember which items she had pointed to earlier in the test, and that was the water glass and fruit. Did you find that her recall, her short-term memory, I suppose, was good in this part of the test?
Response. In this test, in point number 2, we asked her to recall these items. We did not ask her to point to the items. We asked her to tell us, but she could only recollect 2 items, missing the socks.
And the final part of the test was language, and she was asked to name certain items, draw some figure, and respond to directions such as close your eyes. She also was asked to write the name of the physician and conduct a simple physical test involving a piece of paper. And I think you found she scored very well on that particular part of the test. Is that right?
Response. Yes, it is. When we asked her to close her eyes, she could do that. When we asked her to write the physician's name, she could do well. She wrote my name. And she also could draw very well, given the fact that there was no ruler available.
Now, I just want to return briefly to the variable way in which you administer the MMSE tests, and you agreed with me a short time ago that Ieng Thirith is highly educated and intelligent, but you did refer to the fact that she's a suspect here at the ECCC. Does that influence the way in which you would administer the test at all?
Response. Yes, partly.
Can you explain in what way the test is varied to allow for her detention?
Response. I believe that if she knew that the test was for her assessment of her memory, then she would not cooperate with us to the best of her capacity.
So how did you explain the test to her?
Response. I did not explain to her before the test was administered. Indeed, in our practice, some patients needed some explanation before, but some do not. here I had to start the conversation briefly with her before we proceeded to the text.
Now, I just want to go back to your qualifications and experience, if I may, Professor Choktida. You explained that you studied medicine at the Faculty of Medicine here in Phnom Penh in the 1980s. Is that right?
Response: yes, it is right, Your Honor.
Can you tell me a little bit more about your schooling before you studied medicine here in Phnom Penh?
Response: after the fall of the Khmer Rouge, I left my place and attended, indeed I was at the secondary school. I started that education in 1979 until 1980. And I was a good student, so I was allowed to skip a grade. I was at grade 10 back then, but it's now grade 12 in this current Cambodian educational system. And I was the first student in the class, first class student, and I then was allowed to study medicine from 1981 until 1983 as a best student.
Can I just ask you about the period when the Khmer Rouge were in control of the country? For about 4 years during that period, did you have any education in a school or any other form of education at all?
Response: Your Honor, I may wish not to respond to this question, and perhaps Your Honor may have or may be familiar already that during that period of time, students would never go to school.
Yes, I just wanted to make sure that you did not have any conventional schooling during that time. I certainly don't want to recall difficult or painful memories for you. So if you can just clarify whether or not you had any formal schooling during that period from April of 1975 to January of 1979.
Response: No, I was not educated or influenced by any educational system back then during that period.
And before the Khmer Rouge came into power in 1975 through the whole country, did you have any formal schooling before that time?
Before that time, I was a student in grade 3 back then, but I did not sit for the exam at that time.
Now, I understand in answer to the questions that the President put to you that you have taken a postgraduate course in the United States. Can you tell me a little bit more about that course? What was its focus? How long did it take? Were there examinations? And is it relevant to your practice now of psychiatry?
Response. I did not study in the United States, but I obtained a degree from the United States, from Minnesota State. And I am a member of the National Committee for Mental Health, and I am also the deputy chair of this committee as well. So they actually came to Cambodia to conduct a training course. There were lecturers and resource persons from Australia and the United States to conduct the so-called Speaking 12 program or psychotherapy training. And so when we attended such training from 2007 to 2009, then we were conferred upon with the certificate of completion of the training course.
So if I can summarize, you studied for your general medical degree at the Faculty of Medicine here in Phnom Penh. How long did that training take?
The medical course at that time was different from the course at the present day, because at that time it lasted for 6 years. But now we have to go through an 8-year course to get the medical doctor degree.
So did you study for 6 years during that period?
Yes, that's correct.
And then the psychotherapy course, which was taught here in Phnom Penh, it lasted for a period of 2 years. Did you study full-time during that period?
Actually, it lasted for 3 years, not 2 years. But we did not study full-time. We only studied 2 weeks of a month, but this course lasts for 3 years. And in the course, there were visiting lecturers who intervene in the course, in addition to the resident foreign lecturers and speakers in the course.
Forgive me if I confuse the specialties, but my understanding is that a qualification in psychiatry is different from a qualification in psychotherapy. Is that the case?
I am sorry, Your Honor, I do not catch your question.
Well, obviously I'm not a medical person, but I just want to clarify one thing. I understand that a qualification as a psychotherapist is not the same as a qualification for a psychiatrist. Am I right in that understanding?
Response. The qualification for the mental health involves the study of psychiatry and psychotherapy.
So did you actually study psychiatry over that 3-year part-time course?
ចាលោកស្រីប្រកាសជាបានសិក្សា
Yes, yes, I did study in that part-time course.
Thank you. Have you any particular experience or have you studied in particular the field of dementia or Alzheimer's disease? And by that I mean academic study.
ចាលោកស្រីយើងមានការសិក្សា
There was a subject on that in the study program in that mental health training course.
And other than Ieng Thirith, have you ever treated any other person who you believe suffers from dementia or Alzheimer's disease?
Response. I have had experience in that, and I have provided counseling and treatment almost on a daily basis, because at the Khmer Soviet hospital there were many patients, so we meet a patient almost virtually every day.
Yes, I understand that your workload is extremely busy and that you see dozens, if not hundreds, of patients every week. Is that correct?
Yes, once a week we may meet up to 10 people, but on average we would meet around 4 or 5 patients.
Can you refer me to any scientific literature that you have studied recently on dementing illnesses or Alzheimer's in particular?
We studied from a lot of publications and journals, and we studied the neurology as well.
More recently, though, have you reviewed any of the more current scientific literature on dementing illnesses or Alzheimer's disease?
Yes, I have read scientific literatures, but we do not do it on a daily basis. And in addition, I am also in charge of teaching psychology as well. So I have reviewed literature on almost every day as well.
In their report, the court-appointed experts referred the trial chamber to the diagnostic guidelines of the International Classification of Diseases, the 10th edition, which is a World Health Organization standardized diagnostic guideline used internationally. Are you familiar with that, with those guidelines?
Ever since I started studying the psychology, since 1998, we always refer to ICD-10 as well as DSM-4. These were the two basic and fundamental guidelines we look up to.
Thank you, Professor Choktida. I have no further questions for you, and it's the the President will resume from this point. Thank you, President. And thank you very much, Professor Choktida. I'm grateful to you for taking time to come today and answer as well as you've been able to my very many complicated questions. Thank you very much.
The President. Thank you, Judge. I now turn to my fellow judges on the bench if you have any further questions to the witness. Then I would like to proceed with the presentation by Dr. Sina Fazol on his expert report on Ms. Ieng Thirith. The President. Now let us finish the first portion of the proceeding. Since parties have not been granted the opportunity to put questions to the witness before us, witness Choktida, so I would like to now turn to parties. If you have any questions to put to her, particularly concerning her assessment of the mental health status of Ms. Ieng Thirith, I would like to now hand over the floor to the prosecution. If you have any question, you may proceed.
Your Honours, our understanding of the scheduling for these proceedings, as has indeed been the case in the past, is that the defence will take the floor first. So we would propose, and looking at my friend, that is the appropriate way forward, particularly as this is essentially a defence application.
The President. It is not an issue anyway, because the proceedings now is not the same as the usual proceeding we have with other witnesses. So I would like to turn then to the defense team for Mrs. Ieng Thirith. If you have any questions to put to Dr. Choktida, you may proceed. Counsel Pat Persiang. Good afternoon, Your Honours. My name is Pat Sieng. I am the defense counsel for Ms. Ieng Thirith. I have a few questions to Ms. Chaktida in relation to her subsequent reports. I will base my questions on her reports as well as her testimony this morning. If my understanding is correct, she bases her report on 3 factors, one of which being a good relationship establishment. The third factor was the fact that she is a female. The second was the fact that she is a female medical doctor. And the third factor was that she speaks Cambodian language, or Khmer. That's why she could communicate very well. So I would like to ask her to enlighten the court how she could establish that good relation and what was considered good relationship. That is my first question. And the second part of my question, according to her report, she noted that Ms. Thirith used her walking stick to bang on the door often. But then she argued that that did not amount to the seriousness of the dementia or any other disease. So I would like to ask her to enlighten the court on that. And if she said that she had good relationship with Ms. Ieng Thirith, what was considered to be good relationship, and where did she get the information from? Because there were many people who were involved in the detention facility. Over there is a chief of the detention facility, the female security guards who were on duty with Ms. Ieng Thirith. So my questions mainly involves the sources of information upon which she relied to derive her report. Response. Thank you, Counsel. I will elaborate how I established a relationship with Ms. Ieng Thirith. First, when I got into the facility, first and foremost, I told her the purpose of coming to meet her, and I said hello to her, asked her how she was and what was going on and whether she had any breakfast or so. And then she would invite me to chat. And we chatted with each other, and I continued to ask her about her personal well-being, and I noted that sometimes she complained that she had the pain in her knees as well as the swollen legs, and she even showed her leg to me as well. And I also went to examine her in her cell. I did not ask her to come out to the nurse room, and I went to her cell, and then I asked her and chat with her about her well-being, about her health status, and her everyday life in the facility. For example, whether or not she had any difficulty sleeping also. So every time before I started asking any question, I always sat beside her and I asked her about her well-being. For example, if her parent or her children ever came to visit her. And in addition, on a separate point concerning the banging of the door using the walking stick, I actually got the information from the nurse who were on duty. And in addition, we also asked for information from the treating doctors. I asked the doctor whether or not the nurse attending to her reported regularly on the incidents of banging the doors, and every time when the nurse went to see her, what was the overall conditions of her over there. So I did approach the nurse as well as the treating doctors in order to get this information. Counsel Pat Persiang. You said that you met Madame Ieng Thirith. How often did you go to see her? And how many times so far have you visited Miss Ieng Thirith?
ចាលោកមេធាវី
Response. I met Miss Ieng Thirith, and there was no regular schedule for my visit to her. Whenever she had problems, I would come more often, for example, once every week or once every 2 weeks. And if she did not have any concerns, then I would visit her normally once a month. Question. From 2010 to date, did you ever notice that there was any point in time when she did not want to see anybody, including you yourself?
ចាលោកមេធាវី
Response. I actually started to treat her from February 2011, not 2010. I actually never had any problems communicating with her, or she never refused. Instead, if I have not visited her for some time, then she would ask why I was not around. Question. So you are saying that you started treating her or examining her since February 2011, and then you also state that you have met her and she has never refused to meet you. So my questions to you was that did you notice any difference in terms of the state of health or behavior of Ms. Ieng Thirith from the beginning of your examination until the recent encounter with her?
ចាលោកមេធាវីយើងក៏សម្គាល់
Response. Her health status from the beginning of 2011 toward the end of 2011, there were reports of her yelling at staff members at the detention facilities. But recently, there was a signs of physical recovery because the yelling as well as scolding the other staff over there has reduced substantially. Question. There is one question, I don't know whether or not this question is appropriate to put to you, but did you notice that her room stinks because she lost her urinary attention, and she urined on her bed? Response. From the time I started examining her, I has never received any report that she had that problems. But recently, I noted in the report, and I heard from people over there that this incident just happened when our expert, foreign expert, came to the facility. Question. So, did you receive this report of the urinary incontinence in her, when you visited her rooms, or you actually only read this report on paper? No, I did not see that myself, because every time I came to examine her, such incident did not take place. And in addition, there has never been any other report of the similar incidents either. And this incident actually just happened recently. Question. So recently, have you visited her in her cell? Response. The last time I met her was the 14th of August. And from that day onward, I haven't met her, because the last day I met her was on the 14th of August, 2012. Question. On the 14th of August, when you visited her, did you go to see her in the cell, in her detention cells, or you met her in the meeting room? Response. Counsel, normally I met her in her cell, in her own cell. I did not meet her in the meeting room. So when you were visiting her in her cell, did you notice the sting coming out of her room? I apologize, I know that it may not be appropriate, but I would like to ask you whether or not when you were visiting her, she was sitting on her bed or she was sitting somewhere else? Normally, I sat on her mattress. Once in a while, I sit on a chair. When you were sitting on her mattress, did you feel the urine odor? Response. No, I never smelled anything or smell of urine when I was there. Question. According to your report, you mentioned that Ms. Ieng Thirith knows you very well, and she also addressed you by your name as well as Dr. Chatida. Is that correct?
Response. Yes, it is correct. Question. When you saw her, did you introduce you to her by telling her your name, for example? Response. At the beginning, I had to introduce myself to her, but on other occasions, since she already familiar with me, I didn't do that again. Question. I still have a question on this. I don't know why that happened, because she does not even recognize her husband. I meet her often. Sometimes she did not want to see me and did not recognize me. She did not remember even her husband's name, let alone my name, but she remembers your name, so it's really strange. The President. Counsel, could you please hold on? The International Co-Prosecutor, you may now proceed.
Your Honours, it might have been a translation issue, but I got the impression that my learned friend was effectively testifying from his personal experience. If I heard correct, then I would object to that question.
The President. Counsel, you may continue. However, this floor is not for you to testify, but for putting questions to the witness. Instead, you may proceed. Counsel, my apologies to you, Your Honor. My next question to the witness is that Dr. Chaktida, you said that you modified the tests. You made some adjustment to the way the MSE would be administered. And you did so based on your knowledge that some Cambodian people had lower educational background, or you did that to suit the needs of different patients. And at the same time, you said that Mrs. Ieng Thirith was highly educated and that the test had to be modified to ensure the expected result. To that effect, when you modified the tests, did you inform Mrs. Ieng Thirith the purpose of such modification? Response. Counsel, I think the question is rather repetitive. I once already stated. Here, I indicated that when the test was administered on her, I did not tell her that the test would be administered. I examined her, and looking at the situation that time, I believed that the tests were appropriate to be administered on her. I asked her to count 3 items, and I told her that a few minutes later I would ask her to recall the items, but I didn't tell her that the test was being administered. Question. After you prepared your first, second, and third report, or fourth report, if I remember correctly, in preparing your report, or in the course of preparing your report, did you ever see the reports filed by the experts appointed by the court? Response. I actually filed 11 reports. Once in every 3 months, one report would be filed. I never obtained any reports from any expert because such reports were not intended to be informed to us. Question. Did you ever receive information from the experts that or doctors that sometime Ieng Thirith herself refused to see her counsel, and that a few minutes later, for example, she had to go back to bed and let the counsels to remain seated there? Have you ever heard such thing from the nurses? Response. Counsel. I received this piece of information from the nurse, and during the last time when I did the assessment, I received telephone from them that Ieng Thirith would not want to allow them to see the group. So I had been asked to help to ensure that she could allow the group to meet or to see her. I think it was not the case that she would not want to meet us. It was the case that she would like us to wait until she had a bath, for example. So on 2 occasions she did that to me, and I had to wait, and then she met me. Counsel Pat Persiang, thank you very much. With Dr. Thida, I have no more questions.
May it please you, Mr. President, Your Honours, I do have a few more questions. Professor, could you please clarify when you first started full-time study of psychiatry?
Response. I could divide this into 2 stages. First, in 1997, I attended the study session when I was the head of Sa Dam Tko Health Center. I worked there and attended 2-week training session. And I worked at the center that is called the Rehabilitation Center. I continued working there until 1998. And then I also attended a 3-year course on that subject, the full 3-year course.
In the course of your evidence so far, you've referred to psychiatry, psychotherapy, and also that you teach psychology, unless that was a translation error. Could you please clarify whether you engage in all those separate disciplines?
Response. Indeed, I have been fully engaged in these 3 disciplines.
Did you work as a doctor at the Calmet Hospital at any time at all? Or did you just go to that hospital in order to undertake your responsibilities towards Ieng Thirith?
Response. No, I never worked at Calmet Hospital. However, at that time there was a need of psychiatrists. There was a request from the president of the hospital for me to help engage in the assessment of the mental status of Mrs. Ieng Thirith.
So that when you took Ieng Thirith on as a patient in February of 2011, you were in fact working, were you, at the Khmer Soviet Friendship Hospital?
Response. Yes, it is correct.
The trial chamber knows that as long ago as March of 2009, there were concerns about the behaviour of Ieng Thirith when she was in the detention facility. A letter was written to inform the judges of the position. Were you ever made aware of that letter?
Response: No, I wasn't. I just started dealing with the case in February 2011. The President interrupts. Counsel, thank you, because now it is appropriate moment for the adjournment. The chamber will adjourn for 20 minutes. The next session will be resumed by 3 p.m. Court officer is now instructed to assist the witness and the experts during the adjournment and have them return to the courtroom by 3 p.m.
សូមអញ្ជើញក្រោកឈរ